And so when you've wired your brain to be so heavily used to this task switching, multitasking way of doing things, people begin to wonder like, well, gosh, why can't I just kind of stick with something? Well, that you've taught it to do this.
Yeah.
You've conditioned your brain to have an extremely short attention span. Welcome to The Growth Project, a podcast brought to you by AMPLOS. Dr. Drew Brannon here today, joined by Dr. Gabby Caviedes. And today is a myth-busting day. How's that sound?
Bring it back to the Mythbusters.
I can't recall a single episode. Can you?
I can. I go back to the one where the myth was if you run through the rain, you actually get more wet than if you were to walk through the rain. And it was kind of this idea that actually, if you walk, you get less wet when it rains.
Although you're in the rain longer.
I don't remember the science behind it, but I just remember that one sticking with me. So now anytime it rains, I highly debate. I'm like, well,
so you walk.
Do I walk or do I run?
Okay. Any attempt I had to be really focused on our podcast today was just lost because I'm really stuck on that. I'm really stuck on that right now, just getting a visual of like, really, how would that work? Anyways, okay. Yeah. Well, that said, thank you for that introduction there, Gabby.
You're welcome.
That said, we are going to be talking about a really important myth today. And this is a topic that I know I've had this conversation with so many people over the years. It's highly relevant to people who I think are aiming for high performance, regardless of what industry you're in. So what am I talking about? What is this myth we're going to bust? And here it is, Gabby. I am good at multitasking. All right. So the person who's out there who is convinced of this, that they would call themselves a great multitasker, let's start there. And like, what does that even mean?
Multitasking, you're basically saying I'm good at doing multiple things at once. I'm good at directing my attention to more than one thing. We'll dispel this myth a little bit, but ultimately I think I would challenge these individuals and say, maybe you're not good at multitasking, but you've gotten good at dividing up your attentional control.
Yeah. Yeah. You've gotten good at, if we were to try to kind of capture attentional capabilities in a pie graph, I think what you've gotten good at is slicing up your pie.
Exactly.
And giving away pieces of it in a variety of different places at once. Like that's what multitasking really is. So people who are saying that I'm good at this, let's get into some concrete examples of this as we're framing up what we really mean by this. So Gabby, do it this way. Let's imagine we've got a working professional. Doesn't really matter what they're doing at any given day, industry wise, but like for a working professional, what does multitasking commonly look like in a day-to-day setting?
Well, it can look like a myriad of things. First thing that comes to mind for me is you're sitting in a meeting and you've also got your laptop in front of you. You've got your email pulled up and you're maybe reading an email while also simultaneously listening in on this group meeting, maybe even responding to an email while you're in this meeting. Messages that you send out when you're on a virtual call. So, you're actively engaging on a Teams call or a Zoom call, but something crosses your mind. You're like, oh, I also need to shoot this message out. So you pull up Slack real quick and you send out a message. And then it also presents in ways of, well, I've got dual monitors, right? So I've got my presentation I'm working on my left monitor. On my right monitor, I've got my email, and I'm kind of switching back and forth between the two.
That sounds like a lot. Okay, so that's very real.
Yeah.
And if you even go back to the example of the meeting, and we've both seen this in plenty of the work that we've done around the country, and we're coming in and say maybe doing leadership training. And although we try to make certain requests about how we want people to conduct themselves or handle the meeting, they're grown adults, they can make their own decisions. But it's very normal for a person to be in a meeting with a laptop up, as you mentioned, emails open, Teams notifications are alert or alive, right? They're pinging. Cell phone is sitting right next to the computer.
Yeah.
Let's just process that for just 1 second here. So there's something being shared in the meeting, information, whatever it might be, is being shared. The cell phone has complete open access to this person's cognitive attention, as does the email, as does the notifications coming in from Teams or whatever your IM version of choice is. Yeah. We could go on, and yet people wonder why maybe they're not taking as much away from that meeting as they could be.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, you described it well, the piece of your pie. I mean, ultimately with attentional capacity, you have 100%, right?
That's all you have.
That's all you have. You don't have more, and you don't have 100% for task A and 100% for task B. You have 100% total.
Yeah.
So when you take that scenario, you've got 4 different input sources that you're trying to, direct attention towards. At most, the best split you can have is a 25% attentional capacity at each. And that's if you were balanced on each one.
So I know we can't read people's minds, but from your perspective, why are people choosing to function that way so commonly?
I mean, unfortunately, it does make you feel like you're accomplishing a lot. You feel like you're getting a lot done because there's this mentality of thriving in chaos. When there's a lot going on around you and you're able to juggle all the balls, then you feel like I'm doing something right. Right.
And that's a great way to put out like that language of juggling the ball. So like, it's as if keeping balls in the air is the goal. And I don't know that it really is, right? Like, I mean, I think if you're very, very active, that's the thing that's that great John Wooden quote from long ago when he said, don't confuse activity for progress.
Yeah.
Just because you're doing a bunch of stuff doesn't mean you're actually making progress. And that's what's often going on when people are trying to multitask is they're spinning wheels, they're doing a whole bunch of things, but they're not really advancing anything in a meaningful way, or they aren't advancing it in a way that they could be if they were just doing this one thing.
Right.
All right. So let's get into this a little bit deeper. And, the biology of this is really, really important. Yeah. Right. We got to go to the science on this. This certainly can't be a conversation based upon the two of us thinking that multitasking is a bad idea.
Right.
That's not our intention today. So Gabby, what do we know about the science, specifically brain functioning, when multitasking begins to happen for a person? Yeah. Explain that for us.
Well, there's a loop system, right? A feedback loop system where it's open and closed loop. And when you're multitasking, you're never closing a loop. So here's what happens. You are originally focused on task A, whatever that may be. Let's say it's writing an email.
Okay, I'm at my whatever. I'm writing an email. That's my task at the moment. Okay.
And then say you get a ping from a Teams message. A coworker needs you to send them a document. So now you disengage from writing your email. So you close that loop of focus, attention. You orient yourself now to task B, which is reading this message on Teams from your coworker. You have to then, fire the systems away in your brain to start
Where is
processing.
That? Like, where is that document? Yeah. Where did I put it? How do I find it?
Recall systems get activated. You have to then go, and fulfill that task. So you go find the document, you attach it, you send it, close that. But now you have to go and reorient to task A. So you have to refocus, get your, memory recall system activated again. Where was I in this message? What was my purpose? And then try to re-engage that working memory. And you can just kind of see that's a very disgruntled system.
Yes. Okay, so this might sound like a strange example, but as you're going through that, it's triggering a memory that really fits here. And that is, I have taught 2 of my 3 kids to drive already. So I've been through this twice. I have 2 drivers out there, mostly gone well with the 2. One's now in her 20s, but 2 drivers. I've done this twice, and I remember with both of them. This is going to make sense in the end. Let me just see this through. Okay, I remember with both of them when I was teaching them to drive, and we were out doing some practice stuff. Early on in them learning to drive, anytime we would approach a hill, they would just slam the gas pedal on the floor, just about. And I think it probably had something to do with the fact, like, if you're riding a bike up a hill, which is really their only context until they started driving, what do you need to do? You got to pedal harder, right? So they would, just that thing is on the floor. And, it's to the point where like your head kind of shoots back and hits the headrest on the passenger seat, which was where I was. And so after a few of these, I remember telling both my girls, I'm like, hey, easy on the gas when we're going up a hill. Like you might need a little bit more, but you don't need to, do that. And in the midst of that conversation, eventually they would ask, well, Dad, does it use more gas in the car if I'm always like slamming on the gas? And I was like, well, yes, it does. It definitely does. And although that might sound like kind of a strange example of when you push the gas pedal in your vehicle really, really hard and how it uses more fuel, the same thing is happening here in terms of if we measure focus. Yeah. So if I'm back to our example, if I'm, in an email, I'm doing my email, and then the notification pops up and I now task switch, that is the equivalent of like a surge if it's pulling power, essentially. It's pulling fuel out of my focus capabilities. Mm-hmm. And now when I ping over here and I switch tasks, that's the equivalent of like a withdrawal on my focus capabilities for the day. So that kind of, it zaps me essentially. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I had stayed on my task A that I was doing, that's the equivalent of kind of a steady pull, consistency and focus, completion of a task. Mm-hmm. And ideally what you want to do is see that all the way through, complete it, close the loop, as you said, and then pivot over to your next thing.
Right.
And so you can imagine over the course of just say a few hours in your workday, if you were just going back and forth and switch, you see how rapidly your fuel is being zapped?
Oh,
that's exactly what happens.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. You fatigue so much more quickly throughout the day when you're having to constantly switch back and forth, because it takes energy. And there's a lot of research on this actually, and what it shows is like your glucose gets depleted when you are, more quickly at least, when you are task switching, because it requires that energy. It pulls so much more energy, and our brains run off of glucose.
Right.
I remember actually being in going through my PhD, and I was talking to a friend, and he's a PhD in chemistry, and he was saying, anytime I sit down to work hard on my dissertation, I have to have like some carbs there for me. I have to have something like a substance. And we got into the conversation of why that was. It's because when your brain is working hard, you're using that glucose up. You need to restore it. So again, this is, going back to this prime example, you're causing more memory strain, you're depleting those glucose sources more rapidly. And then the third piece is stress.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're going to elicit the stress response system because you're responding to a stimulus.
It's a stress state in part because it's kind of a hypervigilant thing.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing that's happening there with your brain is as you condition your brain more and more to be switching a lot, then the way it begins to behave is it then starts to either anticipate or look for the switch.
Right.
And you struggle to just to stick with something, to kind of see it all the way through. And if you are just with consistency, only, let's just make up some numbers here. If I only go 4, 5, 6 minutes on one thing before I'm switching to something else, and if I do that day in and day out, if I decide one day I'm going to ask my brain instead to kind of stick with something for maybe 20, 30 minutes, it really can't do it.
No, it's hard. You have to program yourself to be able to do it.
Correct. And so when you've wired your brain to be so heavily used to this task switching, multitasking way of doing things, people begin to wonder like, well, gosh, why can't I just kind of stick with something? Well, that you've taught it to do this.
Yeah.
You've conditioned your brain to have an extremely short attention span.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And unfortunately that is the world we're living in, where even young kids, that's how we're programming them. They no longer can sit down and watch an 2-hour-long Disney movie.
No.
It's, 30 seconds to 2 minutes and they're out of it.
Yep.
And so
it's
an uphill battle.
I've lived that. I have lived that with our kids. And my family has heard me say this before. When we do a family movie night, of course there's an element of like entertainment, but I swear part of it is like attention training.
It is.
which sounds ridiculous.
Sit down
and crazy.
And
it's
watch
like,
a movie.
We're going to sit down. We're going to watch the whole movie. We're not going to decide after 20 minutes that it's not entertaining enough. Like we're seeing it all the way through. And it is difficult at times to get people to do that.
It is.
So yes, that's absolutely a real thing.
So, we've talked a little bit about the cost on us cognitively, but what about performance? What happens to our performance when we start multitasking?
Yeah, I would take that back to kind of that activity productivity dynamic. And I think the net of it, Gabby, becomes you could take a person who like, okay, they come into their office or whatever it might be and say they hit the ground running at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday morning and they go hard right up until lunch. And then they get to lunch. And if someone were to kind of drop by their workspace and say, hey, what have you gotten knocked out so far today? And if they've multitasked a ton, there's a real possibility that they've chipped away at a whole bunch of things and finished nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. And
so I think, where does it show up and hit? Cognitive cost is a huge part of it. So is just what we call performance impact of, hey, I've like slightly moved the ball down the field or slightly moved the needle from A to B, but you know what? I haven't really finished anything.
Yeah.
And people end up feeling frustrated. They feel a little bit discouraged of like, gosh, I can't quite seem to get this thing done. And they probably won't get it done anytime soon if they keep switching.
Yeah. And, I go back to what we talked about at the beginning. There are some industries where multitasking is a requirement.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
And
it needs to be pointed out.
A little bit unavoidable, but I think the message here is when it is unavoidable, at least being able to pick out what is a priority right now. If, there's emails that need to be replied to, but maybe you have a presentation that afternoon and you need to get through and make some edits to your slide deck. That should probably be your first priority.
Right.
And then, then reply to the email. So I think that in some instances, we've talked about it being unavoidable, but you've got to be able to prioritize.
Right. Yeah. And I'm glad you're pointing this out because we realize not everybody is like at their workstation all day.
Right.
But lots of people aren't doing that. And so you need to be able to kind of think about and hear some of these concepts as we're going through them and figure out how they apply to what your context is. So I think all that is 100% true. However, I also know we have encountered plenty of people over the years in industries that they definitely are not your traditional workspace type industries. We get that. But they also excuse themselves a lot when it comes to these things.
Right.
So there's a middle ground out there somewhere. Like if you're in an industry where it is tough for you to kind of block things out and just stick to one thing, all right, well, then how do you get at least a little bit better in this? How do you find windows of time where you do turn some things off or you're able to push some things out to be more productive? Because just the ongoing multitask attempt, I mean, the research is crystal clear on this. It just isn't effective.
Right.
Okay, Gabby, now as we break down some of these difficulties with this myth of multitasking, the research has also been clear from the standpoint of like, who are the people that are most susceptible to fall into some of these traps? So what does the data say is the most common profile of who suffers from this?
Sure, high performers.
High performers.
High achievers,
congratulations.
high performers. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody who is, motivated and striving for more growth mindset, these individuals, fortunately, are going to be more susceptible to this.
Yep.
Reason being, we talked about this earlier on, busyness feels good. It feels like you're making progress, like you're doing something productive with your day. But also responsiveness. We talk about this a lot with life in general. People, they like to be on top of responding. It's a degree of efficiency that is maybe conveyed when you're like, I'm going to get back to you within 24 hours, and I do that. And then sometimes I do it within 2 hours. Yeah. And I feel good about that because I am on top of being, that intentional communicator.
Right.
So responsiveness, I think, is something that plays a big role in it as well.
Yeah. Which, hey, we're all for people being responsive.
Yes.
However, if you want to go back to like, what's the ideal way to be responsive? We'll get into that a little bit later in this conversation. There's some do's and some don'ts related to how to think about responsiveness.
Yeah.
Because if your version of responsiveness is you respond to the incoming email like right when you get it, the odds are that's not very multitasking friendly. Like the odds are that's a switching cost that you've just made that you really want to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these high performers, they are more commonly doing these things, and it's unfortunate because these are people they're super driven, they're hungry, they're ambitious. They want to do big things and great things, and they are. But I think the other place this conversation is really relevant for these people is like, hey, you're leaving something on the table there. Mm-hmm. You are really leaving some things out there from a focus and attention standpoint that you could be even better at what you're doing. Yeah. With some adjustments.
Yeah. And the emphasis on quantity over quality is what you're seeing show up is you become more focused on getting things done quickly. Yeah. That you're sacrificing quality. Yep. You're going to start to see errors come up, little mistakes here and there that were just oversights. Right. That likely wouldn't have happened had you been devoting, 10% more of your attention on this task and not on that secondary task.
Right. Yeah, the errors thing is a big deal. Mm-hmm. It's a big deal because when you task switch, you're more likely to be making those mistakes. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we got the high performers making their mistake here. They're getting into this stuff. What are some other performance costs, whether we're talking about the high performers or not? What are some other expected performance costs, Gabby, that we see?
So one that's very common in the literature is shallow work. And what this is described as is a lack of depth and intentionality behind the work that you're doing, a lack of problem solving. You're just really surface level in the work that you're doing. Mm-hmm. Again, leads to oversights, leads to errors. Yep. And then additionally, there's the emotional reactivity. We talked about the stress response system. By keeping yourself in this heightened state, you are going to be more reactive. Mm-hmm. If I'm already working on 2 or 3 tasks in my office, and then somebody comes and knocks at my door and has a question for me, I may snap and be like, "What? Right. What do you need?"
Right. Because it can strike that person as like, oh, just one more thing, or mm-hmm. I've got heightened stress, or that was the thing that kind of pushed me across the threshold of now I'm getting emotional, or I'm really bothered about this, versus if I'm kind of locked in on one thing. Still not ideal because you're going to switch, mm-hmm. but I mean, I don't recommend ignoring the person at your door either. That's probably not the way to be. Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other thing that shows up here is, you're just not as available for people from a focus standpoint. If I'm doing all these things, we'll go back to the example you just gave, and someone drops by, you're not as attuned to what's happening mm-hmm. or what they might need. Right. And so now what we've done is we've begun to create kind of a ripple effect of like my choices of multitasking are now having an impact on someone else as well, because they're not able to get the question answered or the help or the support, whatever it might be. So that's interesting about how it can kind of begin to kind of roll downhill as well with the people on your team.
Right.
Okay, so let's think about this. I think we've established the fact that if you're doing a lot of multitasking, or any multitasking, actually, you want to give this some thought. Mm-hmm. But then the next question becomes, then what should I be doing? Right. So if multitasking is not the path we want to be on, what are some different ways to function? Let's knock these out here a little bit. Let's start with one, Gabby.
Yeah. There's a lot of research on chunking and time blocking when it comes to attentional capacity and ultimately just efficiency. It's, being able to dedicate 45 minutes, an hour of your time to one task before you switch. Being able to fully open a loop, close the loop before you switch a task. And a lot of this comes down to taking control back of your schedule and saying, okay, for the first 30 to 45 minutes I'm at work, I'm responding to emails that I got in the 12 hours that I was away from work. Mm-hmm. And then really blocking that time off for that. One task, no notifications, just locked into that one task.
Yeah, and I think by doing that, the impact is just the efficiency of it, right? Just boom, boom, boom. You're knocking out all of these response emails, whatever they might be. You've chosen a block of time for it. If you're going to start your day that way, you probably want to do one of two things. That's either start a lot of your days that way, like, hey, that's kind of my system that I run, or if you're going to sometimes start that way and sometimes not start that way, put it on your calendar on the days you are. So that really the whole idea here is like we want to create the removal of choice when we come in to begin the day.
Right.
Of like, let's have a good plan where as soon as I walk in the door, I already know what's going to happen first.
Right.
The routine of that is really, really important.
Absolutely.
So we've got the attention blocks. That's one way to do it. Another one would be what we call context batching. And this would just be stringing a lot of things together that makes sense. And so an example would be like I know one thing we do here at AMPLOS is almost all of our internal meetings are on Mondays.
Yes.
So we already know that, right? We already know that, hey, we have different meetings that fulfill different purposes. We're going to knock them all out on Monday so that as the week gets going, and it's normal for our team members to maybe be some other places as the week goes, that kind of thing. We're missing less people.
Yeah.
And then also we're creating less disruptions.
Right. Of
like, let's all get on the same page. Let's have a shared understanding of what needs to happen. Let's fulfill all these meeting needs that we have. And then the rest of the week can just kind of fall into place. But stringing things together in that way is a really helpful way to just what we call batch things.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's similar tasks, it limits, even if you are having to switch from an email to person A to person B, it's still emails, right?
Yeah,
it's still the similar task. So yeah, context batching would be a second place to start there. And then third, I think, is with the transitions, being intentional. Having a system in place that, when you are closing the loop on a task, when you complete a task, you take, 1 to 2 minutes to reorient yourself intentionally on the next. That alone gives your brain a moment to, hey, acknowledge that task A is done, task B, let's go into it.
Yep.
And open that loop.
Yep. Yeah, I really like the routine of that. And I've worked with a lot of people over the years, leaders especially, who are they're running important meetings. The presence and the plan they're bringing to these meetings is really, really important. And so that just simple transition routines that you even mentioned are, all right, let's imagine you're in your office or kind of where you do your work, and there's an important meeting that you're going to be playing a key role in, and it's located somewhere different. Well, my recommendation is always, and we're saying it's in your building though, whatever that might look like, thoughtfully and intentionally walk slowly to the meeting.
Yes.
Don't be in a hurry. Do some gather breaths while you're walking. Be very slow in like processing your thoughts around the purpose, the goal, the way you want to show up. Use that transition time wisely so that when you enter the environment, whatever the meeting might look like, you're in a good place to have it go the way you want it to go.
Right.
It's so normal, unfortunately, for people to do the opposite of everything I just described.
Yeah.
Come flying down the hall, going 100 miles an hour.
Rush into the meeting.
Heightened stress, maybe bothered about something. Yeah. And then guess who gets to feel the full weight of that from that person? Everybody else in the meeting.
Yeah.
And you probably don't really want to do that, but it becomes really difficult to avoid if you don't have the right transition.
Yeah, it does. And then I think the fourth piece of advice here we would offer is practice this when you can. Find, little moments throughout the day where you can get intentional with this, whether that's, when you're having a one-on-one conversation, not picking up your phone intentionally. We are all guilty of this, whether it be with, your spouse or when you're having a conversation with a friend, they're talking to you, or maybe even you're the one talking to them, and you still pick up your phone and are sending a message. And I know this research on this is accurate because all of my friends know if I'm on the phone with them and I'm responding to another message. Because funny. I go dead silent. I'm listening, I'm hearing,
right,
but I'm not there. And they're like, Gabby, are you responding to a message right now? I'm like,
oh, they just ask you. How about that?
Now they do because they know it's so, and we think we're good at it because I think I'm good at hearing what they're saying, but they can tell when you're checked out. People around you can tell. And so you're not as efficient at it as you think you are.
Yep. Yeah. But that's a great example too, because that is very routine for a lot of people. Is if you're at your house or wherever you might be, and you're in a conversation on your phone, and you have it on speakerphone, and so you're on your phone doing something,
Yeah.
You're reading emails, you're sending texts, whatever it might be. And like that, so that's a good point too. In that for people who are listening to this episode today and thinking like, yeah, I want to kind of make this adjustment or make that adjustment, it will take some work.
Yeah.
Because these are habits.
And I'd even ask you, how many of you right now are listening to this while also scrolling on something else?
Although if you are driving while listening to this, I want you to multitask.
Yes, please multitask in that instance.
Yeah, don't just go all in on the podcast if you're driving down the road right now. We'd like you to do both. So that's, I guess there are exceptions in here about being able to do both those things. Okay, so as we kind of move toward a close here, what about final thoughts from you, Gabby?
Yeah, I think, a great awareness raising point for our listeners would be to start considering, where are you fragmenting your attention the most? At what point during your day do you catch yourself kind of in this chaos mode that maybe you feel like you're thriving in, but there's just so many balls up in the air and you're juggling them, but try to bring awareness to at what point in your day that's happening and how you might be able to reassign your focus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's great. And just like a lot of the conversations we have on the Growth Project, it all begins with raising the awareness for each person. It's always effective to kind of maybe talk to some people, ask some people about, if you're married, ask your spouse or a partner or whatever it might be, of like, hey, how do you think I'm doing in this department?
Yeah.
Like how's it look? Mm-hmm. And you'll probably get some good feedback, but just get some feedback, start somewhere. And I think you'll see some very quick returns on your efficiency and your productivity if you just push some things out. All right. So as always, we are thankful to our listeners for tuning in, and we look forward to the next conversation here real soon. Take care.
Take care.